Hello and welcome. My name is Maria Chouette and I'm your host for today's webinar, Automation Meets GDPR. Now it's 10 months since GDPR has become binding, and Tech Radar recorded a significant number of data breaches, 60,000 across Europe. And what we find is that with each breach widely published in the mainstream media, we do see the names of Amazon and British Airways, and also consumers and customers are realizing how they can exercise their rights under GDPR, requesting the kind of data that organizations are holding on them in their databases. And now that's the reason why organizations are gradually turning to cognitive search technologies. And with me today, I am really happy to have Miguel Rodriguez from Squirro with me. He will give us a good understanding why that is, and how cognitive search capabilities can be harnessed within new technologies. At the same time, I've got Silvan Leuenberger from consulting firm AdNovum with me, and he'll be giving us a hands-on demo of the GDPR solution to deal with your SAR requests while ensuring compliance. At the very end, I would like to introduce Jörg Schöni. He's a real subject matter expert on GDPR and security consultant, having held global positions as Chief Information Security Officer, and he'll be joining us for the Q&A session at the end, giving us a bit of an insight how he's developed security guidelines for his clients. So at that point, many thanks for sending in your questions from yesterday ahead of the webinar. For anyone during the webinar, this is a live send questions in. I will be collating these at the very end, and I've put some time aside to go through that and answer these in detail. So at that point, thank you very much for joining us, and I would like to hand over to Miguel Rodriguez from Squirro. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Maria. So would just like to start with a very short overview on the GDPR regulation. As you all know, the European Union has increased the rights of privacy for individuals and gave regulatory authorities greater powers to take action against businesses that breach the new laws. Deadline was 25th of May 2018, and as Maria outlined, since that day, over 60,000 data breaches have already been reported, and some of you might have read about it. Google was fined with a fine of 50,000 euros directly in France, and we'll see more and more bigger fines being the attention of the public. The penalties so far go either up of 4% of the annual global revenue or 20 million, whatever is greater. So what is the problem around the subject access requests? So on the next slide, we'll see that one of the main challenges the company face are the so-called data silos. As we all know, data is scattered across the organization. Many companies have the SharePoints of this world, the Atlassians of this world, and many other data sources such as email, the notorious file servers. We have then systems that are used in the day-to-day, like the CRM, the ERP, supply chain management systems, and so on and so on. All this data is not available in a consolidated view. Even though companies have invested in data warehouses, one of the most difficult parts of the data, the unstructured data, has not been covered by them, and specifically not to search across all this data in a fast and efficient way. In the next slide, we see also that this challenge is not becoming less important, but it's increasing, because this is really just the beginning. Data is growing in average around 55% per year. This will not become less, but will go up tremendously in the next couple of years. And most of this data is unstructured data. So it's textual data, it's data that's not computable, that cannot be used. On the next slide, we see this a bit more, a bit better outlined. So we have here a comparison between structured and unstructured data for those that don't know the difference yet. So on the structured data side, we have all those rows and columns, the Excel files and everything that you can get from a SQL database. On the unstructured side, we have everything that cannot be really displayed in rows, or that has not a structure, it's not immediately computable, or we have things like images, audio, video, and all the other data sources that I just outlined. So this is really the challenge. How do we get across all this data, the relevant information, to answer a GDPR request? And is all about today. Because as we see on the next slide, search is complex. So what do we do to find the needle in the haystack? So first of all, we need a solution that is able to gather data. So it's able to connect to multiple data sources. In the case of GDPR, obviously here more the internal data sources. Then we need the capability to empower search. A search is very complex, and just a keyword search will not help you here, because how many Miguel Rodriguez you will find in your data set if you live in Spain? Probably too many to count, and it will be too difficult to find then the right one that requests that send a GDPR request. And the last part is act. Everything needs to be presented in a way where you have the possibility to act upon it in a fast and efficient way. And this is exactly why we rely here on cognitive search. And our application is powered by cognitive search. So what does it do? So first of all, we have a lot of connectors out of the box available to all those internal data sources that are most commonly used. We talk here about CRM systems, ERP systems, email, file servers, archives, SharePoints, all the ones that I mentioned and you saw in the previous slides. The second part is that we have the capability with our solution to enrich this data. This means that we can make unstructured data structured and therefore computer readable. And in the case of GDPR request, what we do is that we create a fingerprint, a profile of the person that is asking for his data. And we do this by enhancing the information that we have automatically in creating this fingerprint profile that allows us then to search automatically across all the data sources. And at the end, in the act piece, present us a fully automated result list and a dashboard that can be reviewed and can be handed out to the customer. So this in terms of a very, very short introduction, and now we will have a deep dive led by Silvan from AdNovum, and therefore I hand over to him. Thank you.
Thanks, Miguel. As mentioned by Maria, my name is Silvan Leuenberger from AdNovum. We built an app on top of the Squirro installation, and I will give you a short overview about the topic and how we did it, finally also with a live demo. So now, let me introduce ourselves. AdNovum at a glance. We have been creating solutions for over the past 30 years. The head office is located in Zurich, and we have locations worldwide, as you can see here. AdNovum offers customized solution with a focus on security and privacy. And the GDPR app is a sample of what we do in IT consulting and cybersecurity. These two topics here. So, in the past, we did a lot of work in digitalization at the moment, helping people connecting the dots, as we call it. So what is important to solve this challenge, and especially also to have a view on GDPR? Based on our experience, we pinpointed the following 3 key points out. First, data is in your focus, and it's also in our focus. We concentrate in step 1 on the data itself, especially important in GDPR. Second, this data has to be verified and secured, and an important step of security consulting, especially when we have regulations like GDPR in our example here. And finally, this data has to be controlled, and we have to make sure need to know principle and stuff like that. So these 3 key points we figured out. Customers and industries, we are having a wide range of different customers in finance, government, and insurance. Just to give you a little overview about different projects we made. Okay, something already said by Miguel, the overview. What was the important things we had in mind when we built the GDPR app for Squirro? So the array of application, it's EU citizens, so probably you have to know where the people are coming from. Then, really important are the time limitations. After a data breach, you have 72 hours. After the subject access requests, you have several days more, but you must comply with all these limitations. You must stay within these days. So if you do not, you get fined. And the fines are quite big, can be quite big. And as already said, the GDPR is in effect since a little bit more than, or since about 10 months now. So keep that in mind. What is important for us is there are two types of data. In the context of GDPR, we differentiate between personal data and special personal data. I won't go into detail, but we can find any data that is important for you with our solution, what you can see finally in the demonstration. So we built up a little scenario to give you a better overview. The scenario is the data subject as access request. So let's take this example. This is, for example, standing in front of the desk. This is Donald. He's a customer of yours and would like to assert his claim to the right of information. So he would like to know what kind of information do you store about him, or you have stored about him since he was applying for something or filled out the web form or whatever. So he's asking you that. And he comes to you and asks, especially, what kind of data do you have about me, and how do you use that data, or what is this data used for? If the company is very young and the concept of privacy by design has been implemented right from the start, then this data is found relatively quickly and easily, and Donald receives the corresponding information. So, but a company that has been operating in the market for several years may have collected a large amount of data about this Donald and stored in various information systems, even legacy ones, in backups and wherever. Now, there is a considerable effort to be made in order to provide this information. If this is only Donald, that can be handled, but when there are coming more customers who request the information, and more customers, this gets a little bit out of range. So the company receives a large amount of requests and still has to manually collect and process them. Will you have to be able to meet the deadlines that have been mentioned? So that's where Squirro comes in. In this case, you need to use a tool-based solution, such as our Squirro GDPR app. Squirro is a Swiss solution, as you already know, for intelligent search, and especially for unstructured and structured data. So the Squirro allows easy linking and filtering of records related to different sources. This, in turn, is also helpful when it comes to knowing which data should be deleted and at the request of the customer, or what data needs to be corrected, also a possibility. Simply stated, the Squirro tool collects the data and information which are located in all different systems and databases, communication systems, document storage, ticketing systems, etc., etc., and provides them as needed. In example, in a report where you can hand to the customer or internal process sources, data offices, wherever. So since every company is a little bit different. For this reason, we have defined a GDPR lifecycle from the start to the end to fulfill or analyze your requirements. We see here 4 different steps. In the very beginning, we analyze your actual organization, your environment, and try to build up a big picture. In the second step, then Squirro comes in, because after the process understanding, we built the Squirro app and adapt it to your data sources, identity stores, attach your documents. And finally, this makes it possible to monitor, which means you can search after the data and create report, react and report finally. So, which is finally the most important step. You will be ready to act on events. Important, as also Miguel said or was explaining, it's not only a simple search, because just searching after a name, you would have other solutions for that. But based on given information of the requesting person, we may have different identity attributes. So this is very important. We have additional information like phone number or a login name or even a customer name. Important is this because this information won't be known by the person, probably your back office, that is collecting this data and creating the report. The people is not requesting with his employee number, for example. That has to be found out by the system and enriched. So how does this work? Additionally, attributes, as we call it, or enrichment, works as the following. Let's take an example that the request is coming from ds@adnovum.ch. So the requester writes you an email to request the data, what you store about him. Secondly, the system automatically takes this request and enriches data from other sources like an identity store. You see here the name, the mobile number, probably also knows the street and the place where he's living. Then we build an entity of this user with all the different attributes to search for. Then finally, or find all the places where this identity is stored, and we can search also. We do not have to search after only a mobile phone number or another number, since we have built it up in the entity. If we only know one attribute, it will search after all the attributes collected in this entity. And this makes it finally very easy for you to create a report and hand it to the customer or your internal sources. Very convenient would it be if this request would be automatically in your system, and we built that up. You can either have a web form that is a standardized way for an input, could look like this one. Just put it on your website and let the people request this GDPR requests. Secondly, there is an email. There is also a way to do it by email. This would be probably more convenient, is less formal, like just writing us an email at gdpr@yourcompany.com, whatever, and then you have to analyze this email. Finally, it's very important that this automatically shows in your work. And we now see afterwards in the demonstration that it is very important that these requests popping up automatically and can be worked on from your back office or what kind of people ever try to solve these requests. So now changing to the demonstration. What you see here is the Squirro dashboard we built. We have built this dashboard on top of Squirro, call it GDPR Compliance Administration, and we have 3 parts of it. First tab or dashboard is requests, the second one is search, and the third one is report. the requests dashboard makes use of the other two. So let's get through the requests dashboard. As you can see here, we have a way of display the information, having a timeline here, and see when did the requests coming into the system, for example, so that we have a little overview how we have peaks and not. Down here, we have a Kanban style board. We have 3 pillows with open requests on the left, in the middle in progress stuff, and then on the right, the closed. This is an easy way to give you in seconds an overview what's going on. How many requests are open, how many in progress, and how many are already closed. Also, we have the possibility to build up your time limitations based on your internal process. So, for example, this request is 4 days over the limit, so 4 days overdue. Now, the system, our sample system, which we have for demonstration cases like this, has the following data sources. This is just a set of sample data sources we attached. Let's see here. We attached Jira that we use internally. We also an Atlassian company for that, Confluence, and important, we have the identity store. The identity store could be an Active Directory or an identity access management system. Finally, we added the file share. Could be a document management system, only plain shares, or wherever you store your documents that we can reference and get into the system. So also we have a way to display here the data that's a standard feature of Squirro, just to put in a pie chart or have a word cloud, or even provide you a historical view about which kind of data or amount of data is coming into the system. Down here, you see all the data that is in the system. For example, if you click just one here, you have an overview, just a fast overview over it. You see the details, and you can go after the document itself without going to the source system. Now, important what I already mentioned is we attached data sources. So we have a lot of people found in the system already. We read them out, we can display them, we see how much mentions they have in the different documents that are in the system. Important also is we have attached a sample identity store. As you can see here, I have 5 identities. In reality, this would be a lot more. But if you have a look, in our case with this Donald Schmidt that we already know, this Donald Schmidt is attached and was probably based in our LDAP directory or employee directory, wherever. We read that in, we attach the system, and now we see different keywords or facets, as we call it. We, for example, know that he's living on this address and that he has the username Donny and this phone number, for example. And his role is an engineer. That's all the things we can make use of when we search. Because if we just do search after his name, Donald Schmidt, we will not find any documents where he's also mentioned with only his username, Donny. So let's get back to the request dashboard. So let's take this request. Your back office now goes to the open request and says, oh, 4 days overdue, I have to react. So let's see here the preview. That's a standard, could be a standard email from someone who is asking for his data, an access request. We see here, that's this Donald Schmidt. Okay, good. Then we can easily put them into the in progress pillow because we are actually working on that. We have now an automated way to search for this data. I can show you that in the dashboard. When I search after this Donald Schmidt, I get a lot of documents. For example, Jira documents, something from Confluence, and also from this file share. I have prepared you an interesting case, and we made up some document for that. So let me filter after that. For example, we have these 3 documents here. I have a GDPR letter, and I see now here it's highlighted where he was found. So even not his full name is mentioned here. I can see, or I find this document, this is showing up that it's relevant for this user because that's the email, his username, and also the phone number in it. Another example could be you have memos, notes all over your company. And then when I go through here, I see finally, Donald Schmidt, and his mobile number is also mentioned. Final example here could be also you have a wiki page or documentation of a system where you see your users and so, and this would be a case, user Donny is Donald Schmidt. We don't have any mentioned here Donald Schmidt, but we know that Donald Schmidt has the username Donny, so also this document will pop up. Finally, we could do a report here, but I can show you here with an easy click. Now we verified that this user has the right to access his data. I can easily get a report. With just clicking on this icon, it will search after the data. So as you see here, I have a lot of entries where I can search for, but the easy way now would be I can easily go just export it as a PDF or even an Excel sheet that can be sent afterwards to your internal sources or directly to the user. Also for that, we made a short shortcut. If you click here, your email application pops up and you can add the exported report finally to this and send it to the user directly, or as mentioned, to your internal processes. Now, since I now have clarified what kind of data we store of this user, I've generated a report, probably send it to the user, I am done. Then I easily put this request to closed and may start to work at another one. So that was the demonstration, and I'm changing back to my presentation. I have a final slide for you, because when we start working with this application, it's important to answer some questions. We can adapt this application to your use case based on the answer of this question. So important for any customer will be, what are your internal processes? They may be slightly different from company to company. So for example, as I already mentioned, we can do requests, or we can read requests from web forums or emails, or we could even add ticketing systems or telephone calls. So what kind of systems are important for you? It may be that you have several systems where you store personal identifiers, or PIDs, as we call it. We have to verify them, we have to check them, and we have to add them. Now, finally, how should a report look like? What kind of CI/CD do you use? What kind of use case does he has to solve? Which kind of readers he has to please, or which kind of people do have to understand it? How much details do we provide? And finally, all in all, the dashboard can be adapted to fulfill your needs, what you would like to. If you would like to work with this Kanban style board or another way, that's configurable as well. So that was the end of my presentation, and I would like to hand over to Q&A.
Super. Thank you very much, Sylvain. That was very insightful. And thank you, Miguel, for your introduction. I've got some fantastic questions popping in live. I've been trying to collate the ones I received from yesterday already in some brackets. So let's crack on. But we are still taking questions, so please do send them through the control panel. Now, the first one's very generic. I think that would be something definitely, Miguel, maybe you could have a look at just straight. Is it an on-premise or cloud solution, and whether we do support multi-language documents? Miguel, would you be comfortable taking this?
Yes, of course. So the solution can be deployed either on-premise or in the cloud. In this case, mostly the implementation on-premise would be the preferred option, but we deploy Squirro on both. And to answer the multi-language part, yes, Squirro supports multi-languages and comes with 32 supported languages out of the box.
Super, great, thank you very much. Maybe another one on connecting multiple email inboxes. So text is coming in, requests are coming in. How can we identify that in real time?
Yeah, so we have over 100 connectors out of the box, and we can connect to different systems. One of the main data sources in this case is usually the mailbox, and we have an Outlook connector where we can connect to the data and analyze the incoming requests in an incremental way and look for those subject access requests in real time.
Okay, I think you've just answered another question that I had from the audience. Is API connectors what comes out of the box? Is that do we have some that come as part of the solution? How much flexibility is there to send kind of to build new connectors?
Yeah, the solution as outlined comes with over 100 connectors out of the box. We also support connection through the REST API to systems. Like Workday as an example. There is also the possibility to connect through our SQL connector to SQL databases, and Squirro has also an SDK built in so that you can build new connectors with a relatively low effort.
Fantastic. Workday was truly another tool just come in on a question from the audience. Workday, we have connectors. Fantastic, super. I have another question. I believe that would be a good one maybe for Sylvain to answer. You've just gone through the little email icons as part of the 3-tiered dashboard that you've gone through. Do we have some means of automation that we can put automated messages against that?
Yeah, definitely. That's configurable. We can add any action on these icons depending on the go-to systems that we have to use, if this is supported, but we can add scripts there or even add REST, SOAP calls, whatever we need. So that's completely configurable, any icon or any action, any click, any link in the dashboard.
Fantastic, good. I've got another one here regarding the reporting of the tool. It's a question around hypersensitive data and pseudonymized data. Is there some leeway in how to tweak those reports?
You could do that depending on your source data. That's part of the GDPR lifecycle. I explained that would be some really important things in the analysis phase. Probably there is some data should not be shown to anyone. We have to obfuscate that in a very beginning, in a very early state, which has to be analyzed in detail.
Okay, good. Live coming in at the moment as well. Thank you very much, guys, for the engagement. The question I've just asked about sensitive data, does the tool, is it able to report on a percentage of personal data? Can we give a percentage of that sensitive data? Can we analyze the report itself? Is that possible?
I could take that. So the solution supports the assessment process, and when the data is classified, if when you define the classification parameters, you define personal and sensitive parameters, the data will then be classified also into those categories.
Okay, super. Maybe I think that next question is relating to the first question. Is the system creating a data lake, or is it just creating an index?
Yes, I can take that as well. So Squirro can be put on top of a data lake, and we can then index the data that is in there. We use as a database technology for the ones that are familiar with Elasticsearch as a technology. So the index is stored there.
Fantastic. That was good answer. Super. I've got a few questions around data deletion. They actually came in yesterday. That seems to be an issue for companies. Could the solution offer data erasure to systems? And what are the pitfalls? Maybe Silvan, you've had some good experience there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, as I already said, we can basically configure every action out of the system. It depends on the destination. What does it allow? Is it easy to delete this data? How we have to monitor it? Probably also hand over to Jörg for these questions, since he has been in contact with this topic. That's always a big topic, as I know. Can data be deleted? Should it be deleted? And how we can do that? May you probably say something to that?
Thank you so much, Silvan. Jörg, absolutely. Please do. We would love to hear your feedback in this discussion as well. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, okay, that's a really big issue with this deletion of data. We had two situations. We have the manual deletion. It's coming from a request from a customer, for example, and we have also an automatic deletion process, meaning you have an intention policy. You should have an intention policy to define how long you need to store, or is it allowed to store the data in your systems. And in relation of this, about this intention policy, you have to define some automatic procedures to delete the data, meaning, from my understanding, all data on your live systems also, and data on your backup and archive systems also.
Super. Okay, I've just got another live question regarding data deletion coming in as well around financial data. Apparently there are rules that are overruling GDPR. Financial data needs to be stored for a certain time. Jörg, how do you deal with that with your clients?
Yeah, my understanding is the following. If you have an intention policy, for example, data about 10 years or 20 years, for example, then you overrule this GDPR regulations, meaning you have to store this data so long the regulation needs.
Interesting, interesting. Do you advise your clients from AdNovum as to the entire workflow process design up to the legal part on what's legally compliant and what isn't? Is that right, Jörg?
Yeah, partially right. We are not a legal firm and don't have a legal background, but we do it much more on the technical focus. Mm-hmm. But we have some partnerships to support and give answers from legal questions.
Fantastic, super. I think I'll be coming back to that a little later. I've got a few more questions coming in here around DSAR. Classifying the data, is it mainly used for DSAR? Miguel, would you be able to answer that?
Yes, I answered it partially already a bit before. So the solution is really classifying the data itself. the unstructured data analysis and the classification of the data is really at the core of what Squirro does and how the solution is powered.
Fantastic, super, good. I've got a question here around whom have you successfully implemented the solution? Whom have you worked with? Maybe that's a question for Silvan.
Yeah, actually, we use the solution by ourselves, testing it, and are in contact with a few potential customers that we are actually analyzing. Especially, we are in the analyze phase, like to see what kind of processes they have and what kind of systems to attach.
Exactly. I can imagine GDPR, I mean, my background is marketing. We're kind of looking at a wider a process within the organization. How are we dealing with data? But then we're looking at technical solutions such as the one that you've just shown to really have those dashboards, understand where we are in the process and order them. So there is a large component to GDPR from a consultant's point of view, but also obviously from an automation dashboard point of view, technology point of view. That's great. This is a question for Miguel. It's around customer satisfaction. You have mentioned that very much earlier in your very early parts of the presentation. How can cognitive search be adapted to really drive that that knowledge within different departments?
Cognitive search per se is really leveraging the know-how that the company has. So we create with this the categorization, so the classification of the data, so that then when employees search across all these data sources, not just a random keyword search, but really powered by that machine learning and AI capability that we offer, recommending like possible entities, allowing faceted search, through the categories that we saw, and even allowing more advanced search like query searches, new or concept searches are very, very powerful and help to get down to the relevant document in the shortest period of time.
Super, great. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate having all of you on the call. I am conscious that we are now coming to the very end of our webinar. Jörg, I would like to thank you particularly of joining us. I do have a few more questions that are now live coming in, but I would suggest that I send them directly to Jörg for the ones that are relevant there, and to our internal team, and we'll be following up via email. I'd like to thank not only everyone on this call, but everyone who's joined us in. And I hope that you have found it an explorative platform to have a closer look. And I would suggest let's stay in touch. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you guys for your time. Much appreciated. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.